But I don't want to get on this podcast and yell and scream and pretend like a Duke loss on a Tuesday night to Ohio State is the end of the world when it isn't. And so we had a lot of college hoops this week. I am going to react to it all. But I will say there was one thing that happened this week that I do think from a college basketball perspective, it is like a really big deal. And it came in the beautiful city, beautiful town of Athens, Georgia, where on Wednesday night, the Fighting Tom Creans. That's right, Tom Crean. Love Tom Crean. Never said a mean thing about Tom Crean. They came into a game against Memphis, came in at 2-5 overall. Tough start to the year. Lost to Northwestern, lost to Georgia Tech, lost to Virginia. But they hosted Penny Hardaway's Memphis Tigers. They came in, and Georgia, without their starting point guard, without basically a player that I've ever heard of. Like, I love college basketball, and I had never heard of anyone in Georgia's starting lineup. Georgia at home took care of Penny Hardaway's Memphis Tigers 82-79. And it is officially time to worry about Penny Hardaway's Memphis Tigers. And I know we don't want to overreact, and I know we don't want to base anything on one game. But on Friday night, Memphis was playing at the Barclays Center in New York against Iowa State, lost by 19 points. One of our writers at Aaron Torres Online, Zach Crow, was there. He wrote a great article about that game. And then on Wednesday night, they followed up with a loss to a 2-5 Georgia team to fall to 5-2 on the season. And so let's break it down. Let's talk about it. And before I say anything else, let me say this. Memphis fans think that I do not like Penny Hardaway. That could not be the furthest thing from the truth. I know I told you a few weeks ago that I don't root for anybody. Oh, I don't root for Jim Harbaugh against Ohio State. I don't care about that. I'll tell you this. Hand to God, if there was a Bible, I would put it on it right now. I'm actually rooting for Memphis to be good. I'm actually rooting for Memphis to be awesome. Because can you think of, in college basketball right now, there would be, if Memphis was great, there would be no bigger story in college basketball right now than Memphis. It would be great for my business. In the same way that when the Miami Hurricanes are good and they're running through the smoke and it's all about the U, that would be Memphis in basketball. Memphis could be the modern-day Fab Five, if you think about it. They have two potential top 5 picks when they enter the draft. Now, I know Amani Bates is not eligible for this year's draft, but they have two potential top 5 picks. Jalen Duren will be a top 5 pick this year. Amani Bates will be a top 5 pick in 2023. And that's great for college basketball. Amani Bates is one of the most high-profile high school players in recent college basketball history. They are coached by an NBA All-Star. Their assistant coach is one of the greatest basketball coaches of all time in Larry Brown. Rasheed Wallace is an assistant coach. There would be no bigger story in college basketball than if Memphis was awesome. Now, if Duke was awesome with the number 1 pick in the draft, Paolo Banchero, maybe they'd be on par. If Kentucky was steamrolling through this sport, which I actually kind of expect them to do over the next 3-4 weeks heading into SEC play, that would be a big story too. There would be no bigger story in college basketball than Penny Hardaway and Memphis being awesome. Unfortunately, they're not. Unfortunately, they lost to Georgia. Unfortunately, they fell to 5-2, and I'm just here to say it. We have made excuses for Penny Hardaway for years. And by the way, to be clear, I'm not saying he needs to be fired. I'm not saying he needs to be this. I'm not saying he needs to be that. But this is a man that prior to the 2019-2020 season said, I want all the smoke. Well, the smoke is coming. We are now in year 4 of the Penny Hardaway era, and to date, Penny Hardaway does not have a single signature win. As I tweeted out on Wednesday night after the game, Penny Hardaway's single biggest win is 2 close losses to Houston. And so let's get into it. Let's break it down. And the problem that I have with Memphis, it's not even a problem. It's a disappointment. I think I talked about this a few days ago. But you know how your parents tell you, I'm not mad at you. I'm just disappointed. I'm disappointed in Memphis for this reason. All of the concerns that I told you when Amani Bates and Jalen Duren committed are coming true. Because I think we see 2 incredibly gifted players, and this is not a knock on either of them. I wish them nothing but the best going forward. But when these 2 incredible players commit, everybody is in a rush to put them in their top 3, put them in their top 5, put them in their top 10. I think I had Memphis at about 14 or 15 in my final preseason poll because I said these are 2 incredible individual talents, but there are holes in this team. First of all, Memphis does not have a true If you want to call him a point guard, I don't know if we still use the term point guard, shooting guard, small forward, power forward, center in modern basketball. They don't have a playmaker at the point guard position. You don't have to have Chris Paul. You don't have to have Steve Nash. You don't have to have Trae Young. But you have to have guys that can set up other players, especially when you have as much talent as Memphis does. And the one thing you can't deny is that Memphis has talent. Right now, and I thought actually Gary Parrish from CBS tweeted this out. I thought it was a great point. Memphis, in their loss on Friday, turned the ball over 22 times, okay? Here's why that's problematic. The best playmaker that they've had in the program the last 2, 3, 4 years, Boogie Ellis, transferred out this offseason. He's playing at USC. You know who was playing right after Memphis the other night? Boogie Ellis and USC. So they do not have a point guard, and because of that, it really, really, really impacts their offense. Amani Bates is an incredibly talented player, but Amani Bates was never going to be a point guard. Amani Bates is a scorer. He's a wing player. He's best creating one-on-one. And the idea that Penny Hardaway sold him and that he tried to sell us that he is going to make Amani Bates as a point guard, it's just ridiculous. This is college basketball. This isn't the NBA. You can't take a 6'8" player and just put the ball in his hands and expect him to be good. Amani Bates is 17 years old. He doesn't have all the answers. It's not his fault. His coach should have never even made the idea or possibility, put it out there, that Amani Bates was going to be a point guard, because that's not who he is. That's never who he's been. And if those are skills you want to work on in practice, if those are skills you want to work on behind the scenes, that's one thing. But when the lights come on, you got to win games, Penny Hardaway, and Amani Bates isn't the guy. And because of that, the offense really struggles. So listen, we criticize Penny Hardaway for one thing. For a lot of things, their defense is always really good. But I thought it was really interesting. The guys who were calling the game, Tom Hart, who's a friend of the Aaron Torres podcast, and I believe Damian Fishback was the color commentator. And, you know, as they were talking about the shoot-around. And Memphis, since Penny Hardaway has gotten there, has been awesome on the defensive end. They play really hard. They're super athletic. They protect the rim, all that good stuff. And I thought Tom Hart and Damian Fishback, the analyst, color commentator, whatever you want to call him, they were talking about going to shoot-around, and they were surprised to see that Memphis spent about 80% of the shoot-around working on defense. They don't need to work on defense. You need to work on offense, and you need to work on creating ways to get easy baskets. And while they scored 79 points against Georgia, if you watch that game, the offense never came easy. And so to me, that is the bigger concern going forward. Yes, you put up 79 points against Georgia, but I was watching that game, and I was sitting there saying, man, there was a point in the second half, about 7-8 minutes to go. I was texting Zach Kroll, the guy that I just mentioned, one of my writers here at Aaron Torres Online. And I was texting Zach, and I said, they got a chance to pull away, and they can't do it because they cannot get easy baskets. They do not have a Trevor Keels like Duke does. They do not have an Andrew Nemhard like Gonzaga does. They do not have a Kennedy Chandler like Tennessee does. They do not have a Severe Wheeler like Kentucky does. And it's really hurting them. They could not get the baskets that they needed to pull away. Instead, Georgia just kept chipping away. And that, to me, leads to the bigger concern. What happens when you play some real teams? And so when I look at this team, they don't have a true point guard. They don't have an offense. And the bigger concern, and this is the thing I was talking about. I was talking about this in July and August when it became clear that Jalen Duren and Amani Bates were going to commit to Memphis. I said, my biggest concern, Penny Hardaway doesn't know how to put together a roster, okay? No one is denying his pedigree. Nobody is denying what a great player he was. He was one of my favorite players growing up. I feel bad criticizing and tweeting all these mean things about him. But Penny Hardaway doesn't know how to put together a roster. Great recruiter. What he does not understand is that you do not need 13 players on your roster under scholarship who can all play. And so if you watch them, there's just no rhyme or reason to anything they do. I looked it up before I started doing this podcast, okay? In total, they have 9 players right now who are averaging 10-plus minutes per game, and they have 2 other players that are averaging right around 9 minutes per game. You don't need 11 players in games that matter. And you go back to the Georgia game, there's no rhyme or reason. And I said this when I started talking about this Memphis team as they were coming together. I think it's easy to look at the talent on paper and this roster. What becomes the bigger issue is what happens when all these guys get together. And I'm not saying they're bad kids. I'm not saying they don't like each other. But you have a group of 10, 11 guys that have worked hard all summer, practiced, running on the track in 100-degree heat, weight room sessions at 6 a.m. And then Amani Bates and Jalen Duren show up, and they're just going to go into the starting lineup because they're one-and-done five-star prospects. And again, I know Amani Bates isn't technically a one-and-done because he's not eligible for the next NBA draft. And it just creates this weird thing where you have 12, 13 guys that all want to play, and I don't know how all of the puzzle pieces fit. I don't think Penny Hardaway knows how all the puzzle pieces fit. And so this is not a knock on the – again, I want the program to be good. But they don't have a point guard. They don't have a playmaker. They turn the ball over too much. They're averaging close to 19 turnovers per game. And we are already – it's only December 2nd as I record here, December 3rd as you guys listen. We are already at a point where Memphis' back is kind of against the wall. And this is what I talked about again in July and August. Memphis plays in the AAC, okay? The AAC, by the way, is about to get a lot worse when Cincinnati and Houston leave in a couple years. But you start looking at Memphis' roster right now. You start looking at their schedule. What was Memphis' problem last year? You can say I criticized Penny Hardaway. I said they were one of the 68 best teams by the end of the year. They just didn't have a resume by the end of the year that was worthy of an at-large bid. And so now you fast forward to 2021, 2022, we're headed towards the same position. They're 5-2. They did take care of Virginia Tech, but they have a loss to Iowa State and Georgia. They play at Ole Miss this weekend. They play Alabama at home on December 14th, and they play Tennessee in Nashville on December 18th. So essentially 2 weeks from Saturday. Those three games essentially define their season. Those three games essentially define their season because if they do not win those games, they are in major trouble going forward. They are in major trouble going forward because they are not going to have a schedule in their conference where they pick up enough wins to put together an at-large resume. Houston is awesome. Cincinnati looked really good. They took care of Illinois the other day and, of course, played Arkansas really tough. But they also just lost to Monmouth. Wichita State's looking kind of good. But are these the kinds of wins that you are going to get that are going to impress an NCAA tournament resume? And so people criticize, oh, Torres, you talk about them too much. It's early. It doesn't matter. Every game when you are in the AAC matters. Doesn't matter if you're in the Big 12. Doesn't matter if you're in the SEC. Doesn't matter if you're in the Big East. You can take a bad loss. You can look sloppy in November. But when you're as talented as Memphis is, this is not the time of year where you want to play poorly because these are the games that you need to win to impress the tournament committee late. And so I don't need to belabor the point. I don't need to go on and on. But I'm just telling you, this Memphis team, they got real issues. They got real problems. And I would be concerned if I was a Memphis fan because it sounds stupid to talk at-large resumes and NCAA tournament in December. But when you play in the AAC, all these games count, all these games matter, and I would be concerned. If you enjoyed this video, do me a quick favor. Make sure to subscribe to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube channel. Also, make sure you're following on social media at Aaron_Torres on Twitter, at Aaron Torres Pod on Instagram.